Hey, this is Yang Nguyen, and you're listening to the Emmy Wealth Builder podcast, where we celebrate incredible immigrant success stories, share proven strategies, and give you actionable steps to build your wealth, freedom, and a lasting legacy. Let's go get it. If you think playing it safe will keep you secure, this episode will make you think twice. So many of us follow that right path, school, job, save money. But what happens when something happens and the path turns on you? Today, I'm super excited for Ashley to share with us how she went from a tech recruiter, terrified of layoffs, to commercial real estate investor living life on her own terms. She didn't wait for permission. When corporate pushed her out, she walked straight into her purpose. And I'm so excited for her to share her story with us today. Ashley, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Share with our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, how you became a tech recruiter, and what happened during that time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Yang. I'm excited for today. As you mentioned, I did the whole, go to school, get a job. So when I graduated from college, that was during the Great Recession. So it was around 2008, 2009. And so I had a marketing degree and there were not a lot of jobs available. And so I was like, what do I do in order to take that next step in my career? And so I did end up getting a marketing job. And so I did marketing for a toy company. And so I did like regional marketing for the Midwest area. And then I just kind of talking about purpose. I worked in that for a few years and then I moved into a tech company doing app development. And so again, doing marketing for that company, but I didn't feel like I had a purpose because I was convincing people to buy a $5 app. And, you buy the $5 app, you use it for a week and that's it. And so I was like, I'm making people waste their money. Right. And so I decided that I wanted to just kind of explore other opportunities. And one of the interviews that I went on, the recruiter had asked me like, hey, like, have you ever thought about becoming a recruiter? And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And so he was like explaining what he does and all that. And I felt like with my marketing background, it was very transferable. But the purpose was, helping people find their next opportunity, their next career step. And so I really felt like there was some purpose behind that. And so I essentially pivoted into tech recruiting. And so I worked for an agency first that hiring for contract jobs for like Apple and a lot of the tech companies out here in the Bay Area. And then from there, I got recruited by Tesla. And so I came and joined Tesla full time and worked with them for about 4 years. And it was a really amazing time just because that was when the Model 3 was coming out. So the company was growing. Unfortunately, during that time, they did have to do a first round of layoffs. So this is like probably in 2018. And I was like, oh crap, like if I lost my job today, like that's my stream of income, it's gone. And so I was like, what else can I do? And one of my coworkers at the time, she's like, read this book. And so she gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like so mind blown when I read that book because it's not about real estate investing or anything like that. It's really just about like passive income and, exiting the rat race is kind of what it was all about. And so understanding that there was another way than just like getting a 9-to-5 job, saving your money and, retiring when you're 65, I was like, okay, there's this other way. Let me like figure out what that is. And so my friend who gave me that book, she's like, I've been looking into real estate investing. She's like, come to this event with me. And so I went to like a meetup and I was like, I have no idea what people are talking about. Like, this is like a completely new topic for me, but it was the opportunity for me to learn about something else that I can do and create another stream of income. That's kind of how I got started in the tech space, but then also got influenced by the real estate side.
I love that you share that. I want to ask a little bit about what was your beliefs on money, on success, on entrepreneurship that was shaped by your upbringing? What do you feel like you took away from that? And what was something that you feel like you may have to work really hard to change or decide to keep?
That's a good question. So my family were refugees from the Vietnam War. So they escaped Vietnam and then eventually got sponsored by a Baptist church out here in the US. And my family really, when they came here, they just like, we got to work hard. We have no money. Let's just work really hard. And it was my mom, my grandma and like the whole family, right? And so I was not born yet. My mom had 7 other siblings. So everyone came over and everyone just picked up a job. They're like, okay, let's go find some work. And most of the family picked up a job working at a Chinese restaurant. And they were just, cooking in the back or whatever they were doing. And the owner of that restaurant, he had multiple locations and he was thinking about selling or getting rid of one of the locations. And so my mom, who had worked at that location, she's like, can I buy it from you? And so he was like, sure. She's like, well, I don't have any money, but can I pay you over time? So she kind of like seller finance the deal. And so eventually the family took over that restaurant and, eventually paid him over time. So I think the upbringing of like working hard was just something that I really understood. And then just kind of working for your family. And so the goal was to really make opportunities for the entire family. So it wasn't just like one individual person or anything like that. And that restaurant essentially puts my whole family through college. So all my aunts and uncles and all that stuff were able to graduate from college through the income that they made off of that restaurant. The family came to a new country and they worked really hard. They saved their money, they went to school, and then they got good jobs. And so that really was like the teachings that I got when I was growing up. And, I respect that. And I'm so happy that the family taught me that. Right. And I think that's a good thing to carry on. But I think it's also a way or a signal for me to think about like, how do I take it one step further? Right. Because they were put in a really tough situation where they had to escape a war. And so, like, they did the best that they could and they did really well. And so now I want to take that legacy and like level it up and figure out like, what else can you do? And so, like, when I learned about passive income and real estate investing, I was like, this is the opportunity to like really level up what my family has already provided for me. That's what I want to take forward. And then some of the things that when I have kids and stuff like that, I don't want to make them feel like they can only go to school, get a job, and like wait until they're retired to enjoy life, right? It's like, you can do that now and you can create ways to be an entrepreneur and make it for yourself.
What you share, I think a lot of our audience can relate. I think a lot of us, there is that, like, what we think we should do in the future can sometimes get shaped a lot by our upbringing and by our past. And so I love what you share about honoring, appreciating their effort, what they needed to go through, what they needed to do to survive, and knowing like, hey, now I want something more to build on that instead of continue following that path. So I think that's really something important that you share, where I hope audience can take away that you can choose to decide your path. You can choose to do what you want to do, regardless of what your family might have done before, whether that's going to W-2, whether that is to go an entrepreneurship, business owner. I think the theme that we're all seeking for here is that freedom of choice, right? Of choosing what we do with our time, with our money. I also love what you share about what you carry with you is that hardworking, right? That concept that you can do a lot. So that concept of always work hard, I think that's something that's really important to take away. And also the community piece, right? That is not just us that we're carrying forward, is our community, our family. And I think you can see as Ashley tells her story on what she's working through, what she's building, that this concept of community is very important for her as she's deciding what to do next. So tell us more about your investing. So you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, decided like, hey, maybe this multiple stream of income is important. Tell us how you got into that first property, that first investment. What was it? Where was it? How did you even start getting investing?
Yeah, this was while I was still at Tesla and they were doing their round of layoffs. And I was like, okay, I need to figure something out. I didn't know anybody that was investing really, except for my coworker and my friend. And she was like, I'm still new to this too. Like, and so she gave me a couple of resources, one being Her Pockets, which was the social media network for real estate investors. And so I like made a profile. I went on the forums and I just started like reading what people were talking about and what they were working on. And I learned about the BRRRR method. And so I was like, okay, the BRRRR method is essentially a way for you to continue to recycle your money, right? You buy a property, you fix it up, you rent it out, and then you refinance your money back out and you do it over again. And I was like, That sounds like a good idea. And so like I started researching the BRRRR method and had to figure out, where do I invest? And so I live in California, and California is super expensive. And I was like, there's no way I can buy something here and do that method. And so luckily I owned a house here in California. So what I did was I took a HELOC against my house, and I used that HELOC to buy something out of state. And so I landed on Columbus, Ohio as my first location. And it was really based on like the metrics that I saw. It was like population growth was positive, jobs growth. There's multiple industries out there. So it wasn't just dependent on one type of industry. And then the rents were still reasonable where you can actually cash flow. So I started just like researching. I made a trip out to Columbus, Ohio, and spent like 2 weeks there. I preset appointments with a whole bunch of people, like brokers, contractors, a whole bunch of people that would be on my team essentially. And I got to know the area. So I drove the whole entire like market pretty much. And I literally dropped pins on an app in my phone, and I made notes. So like I drop a pin and be like, don't invest here or whatever it was, right? So like I mapped it out, and then started just like looking at deals with an agent and underwrote deals every day. And I was like figuring out, like, okay, which one works, which one doesn't. And then I just like made a goal to make an offer each week. And so eventually, you know, an offer was accepted, and I was able to get a duplex out there. So I bought it all cash with my HELOC, and then I fixed it up and then rented it out and refinanced my money back out. And so that was almost a perfect BRRRR. I think I left maybe like 10,000 in it or something like that. But I mean, now it's fast forward to 2025, like I still have that one. That one's like my baby, where it's like the memorable like investment. It was like my first step into it. So yeah, I was doing that all alongside my full-time W-2 job. And I think the really interesting thing that I always remember is like I kind of did it alone in a sense. Like I didn't really have somebody to talk to about it, just because I didn't really know anybody, and the forums were like my friend, right? So I just talked to strangers online. But if I were to kind of look back, I wish I had more of a community like you're talking about that helped me vent and go through different things, because I definitely did make a lot of mistakes there, but it was really good learning lessons at the end of the day.
Wow, I love that. I actually just gave you guys the whole investing roadmap. So what she just shared there, right, is that she start first with looking at herself and what she has strength in, right? So she knew where she was at was expensive. So as you're listening, think about this, right? Think about where you're at right now. Is this something that where you want to invest, or would you prefer to go somewhere out of state? Second piece you look at is what resources she has. So at that point, she has a W-2, she has a HELOC on her primary home. So look at all the resources you have, whether you have stock investing, maybe you have family and friends that can lend you money. Maybe you have a really high paying W-2 that allow you to actually leverage that to get a loan, right? So always start at what you have first, figure out your resource. And then what she did next is go out to see the market, right? I love that she mentioned building her team. So that's very important, to meet people, to get that little note saying, don't invest here. All those things are important things that you can do, right? Go look at a market, build your team, realtor, property management company, lenders. All those are important people that can help add to your investing, even if you're starting out or even if you're already an experienced investor, right? And then I love what you share, Ashley, about how disciplined you were about making offers. You can look at all these properties, you can look at all this market, but you will get zero if you don't make any offer. As you're starting out, you will make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. As long as you keep going, you will never lose. As long as you keep going, that will be the most important thing. And I love what you share, Ashley, about the building community. I can relate a lot to that. On my very first property, I was Googling a lot of things. I was crying almost every week because this might be what you can experience when you're in a W-2 role. If you look around, you're probably not going to have a lot of people who are doing similar thing that what you're doing, right? Building wealth outside of the W-2, investing, becoming a property owner. So it can feel very lonely. It can feel very challenging, right? Because you're just in this echo chamber and you just cry to yourself and like Googling and figuring this out. So if the community right around you are not investors, are not business owner, are not entrepreneur, you can find community that's all they do. I don't know, you probably felt it when you first started. It's like The W-2 is like what's normal, and then the investing is so not normal, and you kind of keep it a secret. You don't share with anyone yet. You're not sure how people are going to feel. So yeah, it's very important for you to get that community and eventually learn what does it look like and ask those questions, right? You don't have to suffer and Googling everything yourself. Let me circle back a little bit and
Sure.
ask you about how do you keep growing in the real estate world? You had your first investment. Tell us more about that trajectory. Like, what do you have to do next in order to keep growing in real estate?
So that was like my first step into it. And then I realized, I was like, what do I do next? And it came down to like, what is the end goal? And so like, I just kind of, at first I was like, I just need to do something. So I did that. Right. And I was like, hey, now what is the end goal? Like, what do I want to do? And so my goal was to essentially create another stream of income and hopefully replace my W-2 income. And so like this duplex, I was getting, whatever it was, like 250 a door in cash flow. And I was like, well, if I reverse engineer this is going to take me a really long time to replace my income.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, what else can I do to increase my cash flow? So I ended up getting a couple more like long-term rentals along that way. And then COVID happened. And so I didn't do much during COVID, but I was just kind of figuring out what's my next step. And so I think during COVID and maybe after COVID was when like short-term rentals started coming more popular. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, like, way more cash flow. And then there's opportunities for you to offset your W-2 income if you self-manage and, the short-term rental loophole and all that stuff. So I was like, this is interesting. So it was like right after COVID where I went to like a first in-person meetup. This was like probably like my fifth in-person meetup that I've ever been to in my life. But the difference of this one was like, it was a lot of people that were like my age, because all the previous meetups were people who were like much older and more advanced than me. So I kind of felt out of place. And so this one was like, people who are just like hungry and maybe they spent COVID figuring out what their next move is. So I went to that meetup and then I just met a whole bunch of people who were doing different strategies, and a lot of people were doing short-term rentals. So I learned through that and even connected with people online through like Instagram and stuff who are doing short-term rentals. And one of the guys that I did meet at the meetup eventually became one of my business partners. And so we were like, oh, we have like similar goals. Let's figure out like maybe we can partner together and figure out like we have some commonality and we have some complementary skill sets. And so we ended up partnering together. We got our first short-term rental and then started running that, and then started to see like, okay, this is working and it's fun, right? And so you're no longer a real estate investor. You're now also in the hospitality business. And so that was like the flip for me. But I think I saw the benefit of just like higher cash flow. You can do the bonus depreciation. And so we were able to offset our W-2 income. And then it was just kind of fun having a community around that. So then I started doing more short-term rental stuff. I did some midterm rentals. And then during that process, I did meet another person who was doing multifamily. And I was like, whoa, like he was buying, multi-million-dollar properties. And I was like, well, this is like way over my head. And so I had coffee with him. His name is Tony. And so I had coffee with him and he was kind of explaining what he did. And I was like, okay, like, how did you get into it? And he said, I had invested with somebody passively into one of these multifamily syndications. And I just asked that person that I invested with if I can just shadow what they do. And so he got to learn by doing, essentially, and just being a fly on the wall. And eventually, they became partners and, did some business together. And then he kind of ventured off and did his own thing. And so I told Tony, I was like, okay, whenever I'm ready, I'm going to hit you up. I'm going to do the same thing. Like, I'm going to invest with you as a passive investor. And then I'm going to ask you if I can come with you to your due diligence trips and all that stuff. And he's like, sure. And so eventually I went from, being in the short-term rental space, which I still do have a portfolio of that. And then I transitioned to just kind of investing passively in multifamily and then learning how to do it as a general partner and operator through my mentor, Tony. And so I really just enjoyed how it was very organic. So it wasn't like he was trying to mentor me, but I just aligned myself with him, tried to add value. I invested with him and all that in order to just get into that space. So
wow, that's some crucial point that you brought up, though. First one is that you did the whole thing by yourself, but then after that, in order to grow, you find partners in order to grow. And a lot of people I've been asked a lot is like, how do you find partners? And what you just share there actually about like just going to meetups, talking to people, see their synergy there, see if you guys have the same goal is how you're going to find partners. You're not going to find partners sitting in a room all by yourself, asking yourself, how can I find partners, right? So you have to go out there, meet people. So I love that you share that about how you found your partners for the short-term rental. And the next piece I really love what you share was about having a mentor. I also got asked about like, how do I find mentors? And yes, there are mentorship group that you can pay, you can be a part of. But the most important things I think that you just share actually about finding mentors is that they're going to tell you what they did to get there. And then it's on you to go and do that, right? Like Tony kind of told you like, hey, this is what I did. And you're like, okay, cool, great. And then you just sit there and don't do anything. Then you wouldn't be where you're at today. So your mentors can only help so much, only if you're taking the actions, if you're doing what they're telling you to do. I know you put in your bio that you're very conscious about how you spend your time, that at this point, it seems like your most precious resource. Was there an incident that really helped you shape how you see you spend your time and what prompted you to really be protective of your time?
Yeah, I would say the pivotal moment for me was, so my mom had gotten diagnosed with cancer. And so she got diagnosed back in, I think it was like 2013 or something like that. And so luckily she was able to beat it and she was in remission for a long time. But that was like the first instant I was like, time is short, right? Like you never know.
Yeah.
So during that time, I was like so focused on my career. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder and I wanted to just grow my corporate career. And then when that happened, I wasn't spending enough time with the people that I love the most. And then I think I heard something, I think it was Jesse Itzler. He was talking about a story where he was visiting his parents. And he said that he only visits his parents during the holidays. And he like counted it and he's like, that is like 3 times a year or 5 times a year. That's when he sees his parents. And he's like, if I total that up, like you can say like, I see somebody or I know somebody for 10 years, but how many times have you actually seen them? Right.
I love that.
And spent time with them. I heard that on a podcast and I was like, holy crap. Like that's so true. Like you literally can only spend 5 days out of the year with somebody, or you can spend more than that. And like, and that's what it's all about. Like at the end of the day, like if you die tomorrow, are you going to be like, oh crap, I wish I worked longer, right? Or I wish I spent more time with the people that I love. And so like that really just changed me as far as like my outlook on things. And so I started to just really be protective of my time and think about like, do I have to work? And I was at Tesla, and it's known that if you work at Tesla, you work really long hours. And so I was like, this is not sustainable. And this is not like something that I want to do long term, especially working 50, 60 hours a week. So because of all that happened, I said I needed to make that shift. So I did end up leaving Tesla and I moved to Google. And Google was like the complete opposite, where it was like, they're all about work-life balance. They're all about, you don't have to just work long hours and stuff like that. They want to make sure that you have this family and this like outside of work life and stuff. And so it was like a huge change that really just kind of aligned with what I valued the most at that time.
I'm not any in the tech world, so it's very interesting to learn more about Tesla, Google.
Yeah.
That is interesting. And I think those incidents are stressful to go through, but I think we're always grateful for it, as like, we never want it to happen again. At the same time, we're like grateful that like, okay, it happened. It taught us something. And so I love that what you got away was just how precious time with families truly is. One of my friends who is also an immigrant, she's in California, I'm here in Philly. And so she shared with me that like something that popped in her head a lot is like, her family's in Philly, she's in California. And so sometimes when she thinks about like hugging her family, she's like, this could be the last time that I get to hug them, because you never know what's going to happen. And so whenever I think about it, I'm like, wow, I just hug people a little bit longer, a little bit closer.
Right.
I'm glad that you share that experience and how that shaped your view on really crafting the life that you want to live now versus waiting till you're 65 and ready to retire from the normal work life, right? Tell me a little bit about once you left Google, tell us about that next chapter and what does that look like and what you're learning from it.
Yeah. So the intention was to leave the corporate life. And so I was kind of building my portfolio to start replacing my income and everything like that. And then I got laid off at Google. So I say I got paid to leave. And so like I got a nice severance package. I gave me some more runway and all of that. Again, it's just like getting yourself out there. So like I got laid off and I was like, what's my next move? And so like I was devastated for like a day where I'm like, oh my God, I never got laid off before. And then I was like, oh, I'm so replaceable. And so I was like, do I go back and look for another job in corporate because it's steady income or whatever it is? Or do I just like go all in on real estate? And so I already had this portfolio that was going for me, right? And so I was like, okay, I have runway. Let's figure this out. And so like the next month, I went to a conference, a real estate conference, and I had bumped into the lender for Tony, who I mentioned earlier. He did the financing for a lot of the multifamily properties that he purchased. And so I bumped into him again because I met him previously. And when I bumped into him, he's like, how are things going? And I had talked to him a few times because I would like look at deals and I'd be like, hey, what do you think about this? And so we were catching up and then he found out that I got laid off and he's like, why don't you come work for me? And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I have no experience as a lender or as like in finance or anything like that. And he's like, well, you have a lot of transferable skill sets. You were working with engineers at these top companies and trying to figure out like what is the best solution for them in their career, right? And it's like, what's the next step in their career? He was like, this is kind of what we do. We talk with our clients and we say like, hey, like, what are you looking for? What's your wish list? And then we go and work with our network to figure out and find that solution. And so I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, but I don't know finance. I'm not a banker. And he was like, no, it's fine. He's like, I'll teach you that. The next step was I'm going to go all in on real estate. And so I was like, I'm just going to try to get involved in real estate as much as I can. And I thought this was like the best natural move because I was already working with Tony on passive investments. And then I was learning from him on multifamily. And then this was just another opportunity to get into multifamily even more. And so I eventually joined the company that I work for right now is Old Capital Lending. And now I have even more great mentors, right? So I have Tony as a mentor. I have Paul, the person I mentioned, and then I have James and just everyone in this community I got to learn and I'm continuing to learn from every day.
I really want to point to a couple of things because I really think that people can take away from it is that whenever a chapter closes, it is unfortunate. It can be an incident that set you back or it can be something that moves you forward. And so I love that, how that then essentially propel you forward and transfer you to this next chapter. And now I love that you built this cohesive ecosystem, right? Because you're now working lending, you're investing, you're surrounding yourself with investors. That's where you want to keep going. So now I love now it become like an ecosystem. And also love you to talk about volunteering people to be mentors. I think that's certainly a great strategy. And to your point, a lot of people will be willing to mentor you if you are willing to take the action that they give you and then go back and ask more questions and keep going. I also want to pivot to what you're building on community. I would love for you to share a little bit about what you're building with creating conference, creating community there, the very first ever anti-conference conference. So share with us about how that came about, what prompted that.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I mentioned, I went to a lot of like real estate events and meetups and stuff like that and conferences. I do run like a monthly meetup here in the Bay Area. So every second Wednesday, we have a casual networking meetup for real estate investors. And so I started with that. I've been doing that with one of my business partners for over probably like 3 years now. And that's how I got into like real estate, right? It's just connecting with people. And so I wanted to continue that because for a while there wasn't a lot of events like that in the Bay Area that were consistent. And so I was like, let's do something like that. And so we've been doing that for a while. So that was like the first piece of just giving back, right? It's like, I want to be able to create a space for people who were like me back in my Tesla days to say like, oh, I want to figure out how do I make that leap into real estate? So I started there. And then after going to a whole bunch of conferences, I really enjoyed the conferences. But I think every time I came home from a conference, I'd be like, what do I do next? So I felt like the conferences were just so big and like busy, and you're just like literally speed dating almost, right? And just meeting people and like trying to remember what the conversations were about and all that. One of my friends and we were talking about just kind of how conferences were in the past. And we kind of felt the same takeaway. It's like, conferences are just like overwhelming. And I feel like I just go there and I don't know what to do afterwards. And so that's kind of how we came about with the anti-conference conference, where it's a conference, but it's not going to be this big, crazy, busy conference, but it's more of like taking a piece of these conversations that I've had with like Tony, with Paul, with other investors, and like doing it in a way where people can do that in a focused setting, right? And so it's like, how did I learn and how did I scale and how do I apply that into a space versus just, you running around and collecting business cards and stuff like that. So the anti-conference conference is going to be like a more intimate setting. It's not just a whole bunch of people pitching their companies or anything like that, but it'll be conversations with people who are 10 steps ahead of you. And so the way that we format it is that there are going to be some speaking sessions in the morning where people are sharing their experiences, but the main focus is really the one-on-one interaction. So we'll have a lot of breakout sessions where you'll sit in a smaller room with an expert or a few experts, and they'll kind of just be your resource, right? It's like having coffee with them and saying like, okay, this is where I'm at. Like, what can I do next? Or I'm stuck here. Can you help me? And all that. And so that's literally how I got to scale and learn and grow, is just having those conversations. And so we want to be able to create those conversations for people to have as well. And so I think the kind of 3 areas of focus is going to be commercial real estate. It's going to be residential real estate. So like short-term rentals, midterm rentals, flips, things like that. And then the third piece, which is kind of like the forgotten piece, is the actual business operations. So like, what do you do about taxes? What do you do about entities and asset protection and all that stuff? So just kind of the foundation that runs your business. It's a one-day conference. It's going to be in Las Vegas this year, September 12th. And the venue is super cool. So it's not like your typical conference room. It's one of those immersive spaces where there's like 360 projection and there's like motion detection, and, we can play games and all that stuff. So it's going to be a very interactive type of setting where people can just like play games together and build the community.
Wow, I love that. I really hear that you love growing and you love bringing people along with you. And I also love what you share about what people are doing out there, loving what is there, and kind of that theme about knowing that you can do that, or you can also continue to build on that, similar to what you shared previously about you with your family experience. So I love that you went to a lot of these conferences and then realized what is missing and decided to build something for people, for something that you would want. And I'm super excited to see how the conference will turn out. I'm going to switch to a mystery question.
Okay.
So the mystery questions are question left behind by our previous guests. And your question is, as you building a life that you actually want, what does that look like today and what's still in the works?
That's a good question. So I think to answer the first part, I would say that just kind of the time is allocated to things I want to do, not that I have to do. And so I think before, when I was in my W-2, my time was dedicated to work, right? So for somebody else's dream. And so for me, I think a lot of my time is now allocated to helping people get into the space, right? So if you want to get into multifamily investing or just investing in general, I love talking to people about that. And so a lot of my time is spent doing that, and then just like building my own portfolio. So the time in my day is dedicated to things I want to do versus that I have to do. And then the thing that I'm still building is probably, I would say, a family. So I don't have kids yet. Like, the thing that I'm working towards is being able to create this foundation of financial independence and everything like that, so that when I do have kids, then I can do anything that I want every day, right? So if my kid has 2 practices and a doctor's appointment and a performance at school, like, I have all the time in the world to dedicate to experiencing all those things.
I love that. I feel like we're on actually a pretty similar journey. I don't have kids
Yeah.
yet either. And I'm in that phase of like, oh, I would love the choice of what I want to do with my time once I have kids. And the other thing that Ashley didn't share is that she's a DJ, and you can see in the background, which is so cool. With that, I would love for you to share a charity or a cause that you would love for our audience for support, and how the audience can keep in touch with you, find out more about what you're up to.
Cool. Yeah. I appreciate you having me today, Young. And so the charity that I do want to mention it's called PanCAN. So PANCAN. It's funding for research for pancreatic cancer. And so that's what my mom had. She was diagnosed in 2013. And then she did pass away in 2022. And pancreatic cancer is usually, it's a very short lived type of situation. But I think through the years, with her being very involved with this organization, I mean, we got to see firsthand, like, just how quickly they were they were able to develop a lot of the technology and the research and stuff to help people who have pancreatic cancer. And so we do like a walk every year. We do a fundraiser for PanCAN every year, and it's like a 5-kilometer walk that we do in kind of memory of my mom and stuff like that. But we started that when she got diagnosed in 2013, and we've walked every year since. And then how you can get in touch with me is you can follow me on Instagram. I think I'm most active on there. So my Instagram handle is _ashflow. So it's like cash flow without the C. I post a lot of content on there. You can also reach me on my email. So it's acao@oldcapitallending.com. So if you ever want to talk about real estate or are interested in financing for multifamily or commercial projects, then you can reach out to me.
We'll link all of that in the show notes, the link to the anti-conference conference, along with Ashley, Instagram, and email. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.